Hello, and welcome to Cerity's Reseller Success Webinar. I'm Jerry Barron, the Chief Marketing Officer of Cerity. Before we get started, I'd like to share some general housekeeping notes. Today's presentation shouldn't last longer than 45 minutes, and there'll be a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. We'll address as many of your questions as possible. Also note that this webinar will be archived on demand immediately following, so keep an eye out for an email on how to access it. Regarding this webinar environment, you'll see some icons at the bottom of the screen which enable you to do a number of things. You'll see a Q&A icon which allows you to type in your questions and submit them. And we'll address these questions at the end of the webinar. You can also email out of this platform if you want to notify any of your peers about this webinar while you're watching it, and also share the webinar through various social media platforms. You can learn more about our presenter by clicking on the speaker icon. And finally, you'll see some content available, including the slides from this presentation, for download in the resources icon. We want you to be truly engaged during this webinar, so we're giving you the necessary tools to be active. To introduce Cerity, we're a 100% channel secure cloud provider. We depend on our partners in the channel to drive demand for cloud services. Since August of this year, we've had a series of best practice webinars for our partners. We call them the Reseller Success Webinars. And these webinars are designed to provide actionable techniques that our partners can use to build their cloud business. Today's session is the next installment in the Reseller Success series. At Cerity, we recognize that speaking about cloud is a different conversation than some of the sales reps that our partners are used to. Besides speaking to IT, they have to be comfortable speaking with the line of business executives about business issues. Today's presenter, Jeff Meltzer, is a Senior Partner Account Manager at Cerity. He has exceptional skills in prospecting that he has honed at Citrix and RapidScale and at Cerity. And those skills have led Jeff to wins at AT&T, Telefonica, and Microsoft. Jeff will share his strategies for success during this webinar and tell you some of the things that he does that has allowed him to get into some of those types of accounts. By the end of this webinar, I'm very confident that you will walk away with a few nuggets that you can start using immediately to build your cloud services business. With that, I turn it over to you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you very much, Jerry, and welcome everyone this afternoon. And really appreciate everyone's time here and look forward to presenting what I feel are some very, very good and effective tools and tips and tricks, so to speak, on how to prospect and how to grow one's business. So, there's two schools of thought, and I'm sure most everyone here is, on LinkedIn and probably have seen a little discussion taking place, why cold call, is cold calling dead and stuff like that. But I think most sales professionals know that why bother prospecting? I would just remove the word bother and just say, prospect. And I'm not going to read the bullet points here, but I think if most of us looked at our successes throughout our careers, and certainly those of you who have 20, 30 years of experience can probably vouch for this. The benefit is if you look at a lot of your sales success over the years, much of it is coming from prospecting or networking. I've never worked for a company, and I've worked, as Jerry mentioned, for Citrix. I worked for NTT, one of the largest, if not the largest, telcos, and a hosting division called Verio for a number of years. As large as some of the companies that I've worked for and as small as some of the companies that I've worked for, I would say none of them, and I have to say including Cerity, have a lead generation program that's allowing me to answer the phone. And to be honest with you, I'd be bored beyond belief if I were to become an order taker and not challenged with the ability to prospect. But again, the key point here is if we look at the first bullet point, 48% of salespeople will never follow up with a prospect. And all I got to say is shame on that person, really. We're all hopefully commission-based, incentive-based, and If you're not following up with a prospect, there couldn't be any more of an excuse for the company really to part ways with you, to be honest with you. Any company pays a decent amount of money to market and get leads generated into their channel, and for a salesperson not to follow up is shameful in my mind. And multiple contacts, to be honest with you. So not just one. If you get a voicemail, leave a voicemail and say, all right, at this point it's up to Fred to return my call. Follow up in my, ways of following up. I'll follow up at minimum of 3, if not 4 times over a 2-week period of time. So, and many experts believe it's the most important activity a salesperson does, okay? When I've managed, I strongly stress the ability to cold call. And my first sales manager, and this goes back a long ways, said it very, very well. He said, Jeff, if the phone doesn't become your best friend in your sales career, you're not going to be able to succeed. And that, looking back on that, those no stronger words were ever echoed than those. And I passed those on to people that have worked for me and certainly others on my team here. So in today's world, there's a number of different ways to network and to sell. We have social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, perhaps Facebook. Obviously, cold calling, networking at events, both online and offline, and certainly looking at, the use of voicemails or making contact via email or demand generation campaigns, so on and so forth. In the old days, when I first started, my day started at 9, it ended at 5. And if someone wanted to get in touch with me, they'd better be able to reach me during those times because there was no email, there was no fax, and there certainly wasn't a cell phone for them to reach me when I'm out of the office. So again, the ability today for networking with prospects and clients is so much easier, and I stress that word easier, than when it was 20, 30 years ago. So, why network? Well, again, 2 reasons. One, it expands your brand. Our company, Cerity, does a lot of networking on LinkedIn as well as Twitter and other social media avenues. But for myself personally, I'm also utilizing LinkedIn and Twitter, not so much Facebook, and some other social media platforms as well. Because, again, not only are you selling yourself, you're representing your company and expanding your brand. So that's very, very critically important. And while networking, I've mentioned LinkedIn and Twitter, and I'm sure everyone, or almost everyone, is familiar, but there are other databases out there that are good for generating, I wouldn't say warm leads, but leads in general, and that would include ZoomInfo, DiscoveryOrg.com, Dun & Bradstreet, and there's a multitude of others. It's a very, very competitive space. Social selling. Again, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, I was working for a company that said, look, we are requiring you to get a Twitter handle. And at that point, I didn't know what Twitter was. I didn't know what a Twitter handle was. But I quickly delved into it and realized, man, oh, man, what a great, great tool here. So if you're a salesperson, if you're a marketing person, if you're a tech person, there is no excuse not to be on Twitter, not to be on LinkedIn, and expanding your reach, both personally and professionally. Words of wisdom here is connect with people on LinkedIn. Okay, there's 2 schools of thought. I only connect with people I know, or I connect with pretty much everyone. I'm the latter. I connect with pretty much everyone unless it looks like it might be someone that's a telemarketer or just trying to generate a relationship because they're a lead generation program, which, based in the Philippines or something, I probably won't pursue. But most everyone, I will accept their invite. Same thing on Twitter. Again, it's expanding my reach because I'm not going to be able to speak to 1,400 people a day, obviously. But on Twitter, on LinkedIn, I'm able to reach a far, greater number. So think of expanding your reach not only with the phone, but obviously with, utilizing social media. And again, don't think of it just as yourself, but you're representing your company. So if you have a Twitter profile and you have some personal views, you may wish to create a second Twitter profile, which can be used for business purposes, so on and so forth. And I would also, anytime that your marketing department comes out with, updates or newsletters, go on to LinkedIn, go on to Twitter and other social media platforms and post that. again, garnering a further reach than you might be perhaps today. So now it gets into kind of the gist of this presentation, calling. And I think it's critically important. This box on the left kind of opens some eyes. 75% of IT executives, and that's something we all have in common, and we're contacting or we are an IT executive, have taken an appointment from a cold call or an email. This number was actually a little more than, or actually quite a bit more than what I was thinking. I know my own percentages, and, it's dialing for dollars, or there's a lot of terminology that we can use, right? It's a lottery. You hit and you miss. But one of the things, words of advice that I can give you is set yourself goals, because without goals, you either will fall short or, maybe succeed. But if you don't have, a goal in mind, you really have no knowledge of whether you're, meeting expectations or not. So I set myself a goal. If I have a day where I don't have too many scheduled calls, but I have maybe a 3-4 hour block to cold call, I set myself a goal that I want to make 30, 35 calls next Thursday because I have open time on Thursday. Knowing that a vast majority, 3/4 of executives are open to a cold call or at least will answer a cold call, you'd be foolish not to. Now, I realize that picking up the phone and calling a stranger is nerve-wracking. It was for me many, many years ago. But then I realized, and someone had said to me, the person on the other end of the phone eats like you, they drink like you, they, see like you. They're no different. It's a matter of, getting a person at the right time. And if you do, take advantage of it, okay? If you don't, at least leave a voicemail, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Email is another effective method. Again, keep in mind, 25, 30 years ago, we weren't working in an electronic mail. So it was either the phone or hang up. That was it. Now, there's a way to very elegantly draw interest to your company and to what you're selling or marketing via email. And we could talk about that at another time as well. There are people that feel very strongly about utilizing cold calling scripts. I'm not one of them, because the last thing that any of us want to do is sound like a robot, right? Now, this might be the 37th call that I'm making on Thursday afternoon, but it's the very first time that Mary Ann is hearing my message. So it's critically important for me to hopefully have inflection in my voice, have enthusiasm, and represent the company in the fashion that if it was the first call of the day at 8 o'clock, right? So keep in mind that, you want to drive forward and again, reach those goals. And if you're, falling short, make up for it at a later time. I always say the intent of that first call, whether you want to call it a cold call or an introductory call, is not to sell. It's to build trust, because I think everyone on this call can agree that no one is buying from you or buying from me unless they have trust in the relationship. And you earn that on that very first call or that very first email. So the intent, or at least my intent and my recommendation, is ask questions. The last thing you want to do is be the one that's doing all the talking. So have a list of maybe 2 or 3 questions, kind of door opener questions. And maybe they're questions that you already know the answer to, but again, your prospect on the other end of the phone is hearing this for the very first time. So try to ask questions that open up the lines of communication, because the longer you have that prospect on the line, the better chance you have of actually, maybe down the road, selling them, your solution. So build a rapport, so on and so forth. Keep your prospect relaxed. Keep it as a conversation. Often we'll have a gatekeeper say, are you a vendor? Are you trying to sell something? And my response would be, no, I'm just trying to reach John and just follow up on some information that I sent. Even if I didn't at an earlier time, send some information, just again, want to keep things relaxed and keep the conversation flowing. But number 7 is critically important. Find out exactly what benefits will cause your customer to buy from you. That, to me, is the one intent of my first conversation. If I pique their interest, I better hang up the phone knowing what their interest is. Because when I do my follow-up, whether it's via email, a phone call, a web conference, whatever the case might be. I want to have all my ducks in a row and know exactly what the intent is of that call or of that face-to-face meeting. So keep that in mind. Critically important might be the most important slide in my presentation is right here. So who should you target when selling cloud? The cloud is a fairly new medium. I've often said there's not anyone walking around with 25 years of cloud experience, right? So we're all in this together. We're all pretty much rookies. So when selling cloud, if you're dealing with a small company, and my definition of small, your definition of small, likely are two different numbers. But let's say a couple of hundred people. So a small company, 10-person company, upwards of a couple of hundred. Target the owner. Okay, typically in a small company, the owner is going to get involved in almost every type of sales conversation. If it's a mid-sized company or an enterprise company, certainly should start with a C-level. It would be ideal to get a CEO, a CFO in the sales conversation. Not always possible, but an interesting little tidbit, and I've shared this with people here at Cerity, but I've also shared it with a number of my partners. When I first, many years ago, was working in the cloud, one of the roles that I had was working for Citrix, which is based down here in the Fort Lauderdale area. And when I came on board, I had already had about 5 years of cloud experience, but Citrix has a way of wanting to teach you the Citrix way. And my sales manager at the time had said, Jeff, when you start selling cloud for Citrix, you're not selling a technical component here. It's not a technical conversation. And I remember probably rolling my eyes and thinking to myself, Scott, what the heck are you talking about? Of course selling cloud is a technical conversation. And it wasn't more than a week or two that I was out in the field, and it hit me. And he was 100% completely correct. And selling cloud is not a technical discussion. It's a business discussion. It's a new way to do business. So working with that or selling to a business owner, selling to a CFO or a CEO, someone that handles the finances, deals with decision-making processes, should be the one that you target. Now, suffice to say, IT will always be involved. I look at them as more of an influencer in the decision-making process. So critically important to have an IT person on your side, okay? Get as many winners within the company. And it's quite possible you could target a C-level person, but never get there, right? So, start high, go lower, hopefully not too much lower, and get as many winners. Just don't aim for having one proponent of your solution within the company, because the more people on your prospect side that they have in pushing you to the top, the more noise that they're going to make. One of the other benefits of networking and selling cloud or selling anything in these days and times is utilizing LinkedIn. And I, could do a 45-minute training just on LinkedIn and how I use it to cold call. But there's an advanced search button or tab on the opening screen on your home screen on LinkedIn, which then allows you to plug in a company name and maybe, for instance, I know I would probably want to speak at least at the beginning, if not a C-level person, maybe someone in product marketing. So there's a keyword search. So I might put, chief technology or chief executive or chief financial officer, and I'll find out who the appropriate people are, or likely on their website. They'll also list the principals of the company. So cold calling today is really completely different than what it is years ago because, to be honest with you, all I had years ago was the white and yellow pages, and I guarantee there's people on this call that don't even know what the white or yellow pages are. Ask an associate. But these days, it is so much easier. There's so much information out there on the Internet, and LinkedIn comes to mind. LinkedIn is just a fabulous tool. So if you're cold calling, instead of saying to the gatekeeper, who's the best person for me to speak with, it would be great going on LinkedIn, doing a search on that company, finding out the principal is John Smith, then calling up the gatekeeper and saying, trying to reach John Smith. This is Jeff Meltzer from Cerity, and might, get asked the question, what is this pertaining to? Well, I'd be interested in talking to John about possibly partnerships surrounding cloud. Well, you don't want to speak to John. You want to speak to Peter Jones. Great. So it's a great way to enter into the conversation by having a name to begin with. So keep that in mind. And again, the focus should be at a very high level, but don't get frustrated if you're not able to connect with that C-level person. As the bottom bullet here says, get as many winners on your side as possible, whether they're on their sales side or the technical side or what have you. Critically important. So, 2-3 questions you should ask as conversation starters, right? And, write them down. Put them to memory. It won't take you long. But like I said, don't ever, ever, ever think yourself as a robot in asking these questions to your prospect on the phone. So, for instance, my 3 questions here is, would it benefit your company if your IT department, or not my questions, these are questions that if I'm in your shoes and selling to quote-unquote an end user, because as Jerry mentioned, Security is 100% channel, so we're all focused on helping you, our partners. We don't touch the end user like you do. So, but if I'm in your shoes, 3 sample questions might be, would it benefit your company if your IT department were freed up to work on revenue-generating projects as opposed to administrative processes on a daily basis, right? So there's not an IT person alive that loves the whole idea of administration, changing passwords and IDs and profiles and so on and so forth. Bullet 2, would ownership like to know what their IT costs are going to be for the next number of years? That's the beauty of the cloud. It levels the playing field. So as a business owner, I know month after month, year after year, what I'm going to be paying, because it's all on an operating expense, or what's called an OPEX model. As opposed to, all of a sudden my network went kaput. I now have to spend another $20,000, $30,000 that I really don't have or don't want to, move from, but I don't have a choice because my business depends on it, right? So the beauty of the cloud is it levels that playing field between that mid-sized small company and the enterprise. Because I could tell you that the small, mid-sized businesses want to compete with the enterprise. And one area they will never be able to compete with is in money, in capital, deep pockets. But the beauty of the cloud is, like I just said, it levels that playing field because they're paying a subscription basis. They're paying as they go. They don't have to pay a huge lump sum on an annual or quarterly basis, whatever the case might be. Third bullet point is the company seeking a way for improved office productivity. Well, the answer is yes, okay? No one would ever answer no. What business owner would ever want their employees not being more productive? And that's the beauty of the cloud. In the case of, let's say, a client of yours utilizing Security's virtual desktops or desktop as a service, DaaS, the ability to work anytime, any place, anywhere, on any device, that's the beauty of the cloud right there, right? And the 4th bullet point, would it benefit your company to truly focus on your core competency, not focusing at all on IT? And so, for instance, if you're selling to a dental office, what are they good at? Well, they're good at, filling cavities, and teeth whitening, and root canals, and braces. What are they not good at? It's IT. So if I'm in your shoes, I'm going to the business owner, Dr. Smith, and saying, Dr. Smith, you focus on your core competency, which is teeth. We're going to focus on making your company operate 24/7 by 365 with no hiccups throughout the year. Great business model. And Dr. Smith will gladly prefer your model over, in essence, becoming their own IT department, which is what they've probably done from day one. So when I'm selling Security to our partners, or I should say potential partners, I'm talking about differentiators. And I think it's critically important because we all have competition. I don't know a company out there that doesn't have competition, right? We're all shaking our heads. Yeah, we have competition. We have a lot of it. Go into the conversation knowing what your differentiators, what your key differentiators are, and emphasize that in the conversation. Okay, so for Security, I have 5 or 6 very large differentiators that I know that my competition doesn't. And you know what? I'm not waiting for 15 minutes into the conversation. I'm really going to hit on those differentiators right off the bat after asking a couple of qualifying questions. So very, very important that you know what your differentiators are. Voicemail. There's 2 schools of thought. One school is, you get voicemail, hang up. Don't leave a message. The Jeff Meltzer recommendation is, you get voicemail, leave a message. You know why? If you make 40 calls, 50 calls a day, chances are 80%, whatever that number is, but it's a high percentage, are going to have voicemail or maybe a gatekeeper taking a message. Leave that message. It might be the one and only time that that prospect is able to hear your voice and hear your message. Okay, so why waste your time in dialing the phone and then hang up? Only to go through that exercise maybe tomorrow or 3 days later and do the same thing. Think of the time wasted. And I can't tell you how many times, and it doesn't happen daily. It might happen once a week. But again, keep in mind, if it happens once a week, that's one more time than if it didn't happen at all, right? So I'll always leave a voicemail. And I don't look at the clock, but I have it down pretty good that I want to leave no more than a 20, tops a 30-second voicemail. No one wants to listen to a life story, a 2-minute voicemail or a 1-minute voicemail. You have a very close amount of time to gain someone's interest. Put yourself in their shoes, right? If someone is cold calling you, if they're going to be successful, they've piqued your interest probably in the first 10 seconds of that conversation. So write it down. I'm not saying script it, but write down a couple of quick bullet points, or maybe, you want to, a couple of thoughts in what you want to say in that voicemail. And again, pique their interest, talk about your differentiators. Can't stress enough, speak slowly. And then when it comes time for your phone number, and I've heard this, and we've all heard this, someone will leave a message, and then at the end they'll say, my phone number is 516-243-9454. Speak your cell phone slowly. And notice I said cell phone. Don't leave your office phone. Leave your cell phone number. And the reason being, that person might pick up the phone one time and one time only. So why give them your office number if they're calling you and you just happen to be out of the office on business or whatever the case might be? Leave your cell phone number, and lo and behold, you'll realize that, what? Good thing I did. Making contact. And we talked about it earlier, researching your prospect on LinkedIn. Take advantage of the medium out there. Go to local networking events if they're specific to IT. I know here in South Florida there's a number of IT networks, and I'm not going to tell you that South Florida is the hotbed for technology. It's not. But, suffice to say, in most of your markets, if not all your markets, there are IT networking events. Take advantage of them. And that third bullet point, and I mentioned it earlier, critically important, just build trust. Be yourself. People buy from people. Okay, now if I worked for Amazon or Microsoft, people might really prefer, working with me because I work for Amazon or Microsoft and I know that company. Well, Security and a lot of our partners don't have the brand recognition of a Microsoft and Amazon or a Google. Not too many companies do. Be yourself. That's who people are buying from, is someone that they can trust. When it comes time to no, this is a huge, huge lesson. Don't be afraid of the word no, okay, because you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it a whole lot more than yes. So if it's a no today, and I've told people that work for me, a no today, understood. But it doesn't mean it's a no tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're, working in your CRM. You get rejected. Follow up in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, whatever you feel appropriate, whether it's a phone call or an email or in a newsletter, whatever the case might be, but touch that prospect. Because if you don't, you've really wasted an opportunity. And that opportunity isn't today, and it may not be tomorrow, but at some point that could become an opportunity. And if you don't have any follow-up, again, kind of a wasted opportunity. What I always do on a call, even if the call hasn't gone in my favor, is say, hey, Wayne, what I'd love to do, because we know business changes, things change, love to send you some information about our company. And if the need ever arises, at least you'll have my name and contact information handy. Generally, almost everyone is going to say yes to that. Now, when the email comes, they very well might hit the delete button. Who knows? But again, it's an opportunity that you need to take advantage of, and it's a great way to end a conversation. I'd like to forward my information to you. Again, feel free to share it with any of your associates. Again, keeping in mind the big picture that maybe Wayne will forward my information to others, that something piqued his interest. It's just not today that I have, a real need for your services, Jeff. I get it. I understand. Emails, I think we've all become quite effective in utilizing email in the fashion that we should. It's not only for informational purposes. Now, I'm not expecting ever to get into a communication with a prospect or prospective partner and close a deal without ever talking to them. To me, email is a complement to either a face-to-face meeting or a phone call or, a web conference, whatever the case might be. So create an email. Definitely, in essence, a one-pager, 3 or 4 paragraphs. It's critically important that you write an attention-grabbing subject line, right? Because that might be the only thing that prospect ever reads. So think of what would excite someone on the other end of the phone and be creative if need be. If you were referred by someone, that subject line should say, hey, was referred by John Smith, who recommended I speak with you. I would think at that point, that prospect is certainly going to read your email because, yeah, he knows John and values John's relationship within the company. If you send an email today, I would follow up with a phone call no more than 2 days later, if not tomorrow. Give them some time to digest what you've sent them, but at the same time, don't wait 4 or 5 days because chances are they probably forgot what your email was all about. So follow-up is critically important, and 1 or 2 days maximum, the sooner the better. I wouldn't send an email today and later on this afternoon follow up with a phone call. Give them time to digest it. If you're going to attach a document, a PDF, send one attachment. Definitely don't send anything more than one attachment. And end the call or the email with a call to action. Good one would be, I'll follow up with you in a few days. So they know that they're going to be hearing from you, right? Great way to, or please don't hesitate to call me. If I don't hear from you by such date, I'll follow up with you. So again, it's a call to action, and they're not shocked or not surprised that they're hearing from you within a day or so of receiving your initial email. We've talked about LinkedIn and Twitter, and as I mentioned earlier, both tremendous platforms for expanding your reach, both personally and professionally. On Twitter, the ability to market your services, like I said earlier, if your marketing department comes out with a press release or some sort of an announcement, a new product, a new solution, tweet it out to your followers, okay? And keyword search, so on and so forth. Retweet others that are in the profession. I often will do that and find people that are in the cloud. I follow them, and then if they tweet something that's of real interest, I'll retweet it. And again, it's expanding my reach. Now, ourselves here at Cerity, we're really North America focused, but I get followers as Cerity does all over the world. Now, if our plans change and we want to expand our reach overseas and open up data centers overseas, we in essence have a built-in audience. Bottom line is there is nothing to lose and everything to gain by utilizing social media. And to me, Twitter and LinkedIn are the two best mediums for that. Facebook, if I owned a store and I was trying to market locally, that's one thing. But I think most cloud companies, the business that we're in, I don't look at Facebook as a great medium today for expanding my reach utilizing social media. Next steps. I mean, there's so much more that we can talk about. Engage myself, my associate Brian McCarthy, who's up in the Boston area and handles the Northeast, Jerry Barron, whose voice you heard earlier. Jerry is the Chief Marketing Officer, runs sales and marketing for Cerity. Great guy. He's based up in the Philadelphia area, but reach out to any of us. And I am more than happy to spend one-on-one time with you and your sales team if you feel that, you can use some tips, some further tips and tricks. Because the bottom line that I've always thought is I'm going into work for any company, and I'm not going to assume one thing. I'm not going to assume that I'm going to be getting leads. Okay, it's all predicated on Jeff Meltzer creating his own pipeline, right? Anything else I get is gravy, which is great. I'm not going to turn down a lead that my marketing department will deliver to me, and that's great. My eyes light up. But I'm not depending on it. I don't wake up in the morning saying, boy, I sure hope by the time I log on an email, I have 17 new leads from my marketing department. It doesn't work that way. And keep in mind, you know, where that first slide said 75% of IT executives have purchased a solution from someone that they were cold called. Again, if I look at my success, and one of the stories that I'll tell you, and this goes back, about 15, 20 years when I worked for NTT, the large telecommunications company. I was working in business development, and my boss at that time said, Jeff, I'd like you to start working with the likes of Adobe and Microsoft and Computer Associates and some of the other large software and companies, and work at a partnership that benefits both companies. Now, at that time, LinkedIn wasn't available. Okay, this was back in late 90s, early 2000s, and LinkedIn came about in 04. So, you know, I wasn't exactly going to pick up the phone and be successful in contacting Bill Gates. So, but I made some calls. I started networking with people at Microsoft and found out who the appropriate person is, cold called them, and followed up with a couple of emails, set up a couple of face-to-face meetings, and lo and behold, you know, one of the largest deals that I ever did was well over $1 million in monthly recurring revenue between NTT and Microsoft. It never, ever would have happened without picking up the phone and trying to network and kind of navigate, find out who the appropriate person is on their end in creating some sort of a partnership that benefited both companies. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to Q&A, questions and answers. You will notice on the bottom left, there's a Q&A box, and I know Jerry had mentioned this earlier, but feel free to post any questions, and we'll be more than happy to respond to those. But on behalf of Jerry and the rest of the Cerity team here, we greatly appreciate your time and look forward to working with you and speaking with you soon. Thank you very much.
All right, so we have a lot of great questions that came in from the audience, Jeff. Great job on the presentation. Let's jump right into them. So,
great.
The first question, Jeff, is coming from Ian. Ian wants to know, before I start, I need a list. How can I get one?
Yeah, real good question, Ian, and I appreciate it. There's a ton of list companies, and certainly some of the major ones. LinkedIn, for instance, has a solution called LinkedIn Navigator, I believe. I've not used it, to be completely honest, but I know people that have and really swear by it. Discoverorg.com is another one. Zoom is one that I've used in a previous life with pretty good success. And there's others, you know, like I said, Buying a List, Dun & Bradstreet is another one. But the key part, the one thing that I could, you know, strongly recommend is that you know who the decision maker is. And by that I mean, you know, if you have a title, whether it's a product manager, a business development person, or maybe if you're selling, you know, to a business owner, it's a business owner list. Know who the decision maker is that you're trying to get to, and make sure that list has a list of decision makers. You don't want, you know, chief marketing officer, you don't want bookkeeper. Make sure it's targeted, because for the money that you're spending, you certainly should get exactly what you want. So my recommendation is, you know, play the field. Get a demo on a couple of those type of lists or solutions. Play with it and see what kind of success you are. Any of those companies do offer like a 2-week or a 30-day trial. Take advantage of it for sure.
Great. So Kate has a question around LinkedIn Premium Service. She wants to know, Jeff, do you recommend paying for LinkedIn Premium Service?
Boy, and I've heard, you know, both sides say, some say yes, some say no. I never have. For everything that I've done for many years, since 04, which is when LinkedIn was founded, and I remember getting an email. I don't want to say it was to my AOL address, but it might have been back in those days. But introducing this form or this platform called LinkedIn, I've dabbled here and there with paying just to see what the benefits are. But having done so, I felt, boy, oh boy, that's a waste of money. I think it's $29 or thereabouts a month. And having done so for a couple of trial periods, I easily made the decision, I'm fine for what I use LinkedIn for, which is really just searching and seeking out potential contacts. I don't need to be paying anything to LinkedIn and can just use the standard solution or the standard offering that we all are, very used to. Good question.
Yeah, Definitely. So this one is from Shelby. So, Jeff, Shelby wants to know, this is a question I see all the time when it comes to sales, how do you motivate yourself to prospect after getting so many voicemails or having people constantly hanging up on you?
Boy, Shelby, that's the million-dollar question, and hopefully I'm not giving you the 14-cent answer, but it has to come from within, right? It shouldn't come from your sales manager or someone else within the company. And I've always said for years, you never know when the next time that you're picking up the phone, whether it's in 2 seconds, 2 minutes, or in 20 minutes, that next call isn't making your day, your week, your month, your quarter, perhaps your year, right? And if you don't pick up the call or pick up the phone and make that call, you'll never know if that was the call that was going to, give you the keys to the kingdom. So push yourself, set yourself some goals. Maybe if you have a pretty busy day with scheduled calls and maybe you only have a 60-minute window for cold calling or for networking, set yourself a goal that I want to make at least 20 attempts over those 60 minutes or 30 attempts over that 60 minutes. And play a game. Make it fun for yourself, because the last thing that you want to be is monotonous, right, and a bore. And by that I mean, you're making this pitch, and I mentioned it in the presentation. You're cold calling for the 47th time today, but it's the very first time that your prospect is hearing you. Let them hear your best performance. It's like a Broadway actor, right? They've had this role for maybe months or maybe even a couple of years, right? But those that are sitting in the audience typically are hearing that performance or seeing that performance for the first time. No different in sales. This is our time to shine. Take advantage of it.
Great feedback. This one is from Rebecca. She's calling from Newark, or sending the question from Newark. She's joining us from Newark. She wants to know, Jeff, do you have resources for cloud computing content that I can post on social media?
Yeah, great question, Rebecca. And the answer is positively yes. Cerity, as you know, or hopefully know, we're a 100% channel-centric company. So everything we do is predicated on making sure that our partners are successful. We have what we call a partner success portal, which literally has hundreds of presentations, PDFs, case studies, white papers, videos. And the nice thing is we allow our partners to brand everything in your look and feel. So you may want to tweak a little bit of the content, put your brand on it, because at the end of the day, your relationship with your customer is between yourself and your customer. Cerity is very, very happy to, in essence, lie underneath the covers and allow you to take all the credit in the world. So I would strongly recommend that you can email myself. It's jmeltzer@cerity.com. Or for those of you that are up north, Brian McCarthy is the partner account manager. And we'll introduce you to Crystal Nichols. Crystal is our marketing manager and does a phenomenal job of producing content and demand generation, so on and so forth. So don't be sitting there thinking that you have to, create all this content and create demand for selling cloud. You can, but I would tell you stop wasting your time. Utilize what we have. And like I said, literally hundreds of presentations, so on and so forth, that you could brand starting this afternoon. So please take advantage of what we've done and what we continue to do, and notify myself or Brian or Crystal, and we're more than happy to work with you and your team.
Fantastic. So we're going to take one more and then have some closing thoughts, Jeff, just to keep it in that 45-minute range. This one is from Anthony from Baton Rouge. Anthony wants to know, Jeff, and this is a good one. They're all good ones, but this one is really good. Will you make some calls with me and my team so we can train using your recommendation?
Yeah, I would love the opportunity, Anthony. It's one thing that I've done for many, many years. I've managed sales teams in the past, and way back when, my first sales manager, who I realized became a mentor, and I don't want to tell you how many years ago, but it was a long time ago. He still is a dear friend at this point. Gave me a lot of advice, but one of the tidbits of information that he gave me was, look, Jeff, if you're wanting to stay and be successful in sales, you want to become best friends with the phone. Okay, you continually have to cold call. You continually have to network, and this is well before anyone knew what online was. This is, to be honest with you, well before fax machines were available. So I don't want to date myself, but in today's world, it's a whole lot easier. all right? We really don't have to leave our computer. And, you know, with tools like LinkedIn and Zoom and some of the other solutions out there, we literally can network with many, many people. Build up your Twitter following. Build up your following on LinkedIn. Post updates, so on and so forth. You know, brand your company, brand yourself, because you are representing your company. So it's a whole lot easier in 2016 than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago to, you know, network and cultivate a following for sure. So real good question. I appreciate that one, Anthony. Thank you.
Okay, so and we got a few other people that asked some questions that Jeff, you addressed on the front end, a little bit on the back end. One was, will you be sending out slides to the participants? We absolutely will. Another one, will a recording be available after the video cast? Absolutely. So we're recording today's session within 24 hours, maybe even today if we can work fast enough. We'll get a post-event email out to all registrants, all attendees. If you missed today's webinar and you want to see what you missed, you'll have an on-demand link to where you can view it. If you're one of the attendees today, you'll get an email so you can reinforce what you learned. So the recording will be available definitely within 24 hours. In that email, we'll also send the slide deck to attendees and registrants as well, so you can have that for safekeeping. But I think that's all we're going to tackle today. Like Jeff said earlier, everybody at Cerity, we want to thank everybody for attending. We want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, and look forward to seeing everybody in the next Cerity webinar in 2017. And Jeff, I want to thank you. Fantastic job today.
Hey, appreciate the time, and I echo your sentiments. Hope everyone has a happy and a healthy holiday season, a happy new year, and look forward to working with everyone in 2017. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.